Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me again on the topic of the elusive Hermes Birkin. As you know, this is a two-part video series. Last week was a comprehensive review of this bag, the brand history, main design features, reputation, purchasing options, and of course my verdict. Today I want to focus on a single, simple, but equally important topic. How did I score my Birkin at the Paris flagship store, Faubourg Saint-Honoré? And hopefully, if the system doesn't change, it will be also how you will score your dream bag at the Paris flagship. So the reason why I don't just specify Birkin or Kelly is because as long as you want an Hermes bag, you have to go through the same process to score an appointment. Although after that point, it gets quite a bit easier. So as you know, I love to keep my videos structured, so today I want to cover this under 7 topics. Why Paris, Hermes systems old and new, how to score an appointment, process in store, interview, price and tax refund, and finally a summary of all my tips. So the last thing I have to do before I get started is say a big thank you to all of my subscribers for your support, your kindness, and for joining me again today. I really hope you enjoy this, and I wish you the best of luck if you are also embarking on your own Birkin journey. In my last video, I detailed the 4 different ways of scoring a Birkin: waiting list, walk-in, relationship, and pre-loved market. For those of us who travel to Paris, it's under a walk-in system. Now, the reason why so many Birkin and Kelly hunters travel all the way there is because there's actually 4 main advantages. First of all, there are 5 Hermes stores in Paris, 3 of which I believe sell bags. My experience was only at the global flagship FSH, which is considered the largest in Paris and has the best stock. However, I have heard stories of people grabbing their Birkin at one of the other stores. The EU price is the cheapest worldwide for the bag brand new. It's better than what you find on the pre-loved market, than what you find in Japan, Australia, UK, America, etc. Connected to that, as a tourist, you get tax back. And finally, because so many tourists travel to Paris just to try and score the Birkin, they actually have a system in place to sell the bag to walk-ins. Although an appointment is involved, and I'll explain this later, this means that every day they have a certain number of bags to be available to be bought. This is in contrast to stores around the world where there simply isn't any stock for days or weeks, even if you're the first person through the door. Or they do have stock, but they won't sell it to you as a walk-in. They're reserving it for one of their VIPs, which are more well known to the brand. So that means in Paris, you can be like me with no previous purchase history at Hermes and have no special relationship with any of the sales associates, but still walk home with a Birkin. Actually, I made that sound way too simple. It did take a lot of effort, 4 days worth, so I will explain that shortly. From last year to now, the system for grabbing a bag, Birkin, Kelly or other at the Paris flagship store has changed twice, so that's a total of 3 different systems. Originally, you would just walk into the store during the opening hours and line up. Sometimes you'll line up for hours, sometimes it won't take long at all. Eventually, you'll get to speak with a SA and begin your appointment in the bag department. The problem with this was that queuing tourists overcrowded the store, and it also meant that tourists were wasting valuable time which they could spend a million other ways in the city of Paris compared to lining up. In June 2016, Hermes thought they could design out the waiting in store part by grabbing patrons' contact details when they arrive in store and then telling them to go off and do whatever they like. When it's close to the time for their appointment, they'll receive an SMS to come back. So in theory, this meant you could pop into the store at any time, leave your details, go off, grab a coffee, go shopping, etc. However, since the earliest patrons were immediately assigned a essay on the spot until they were all taken, and after that point the others were told to come back later, this meant that people were lining up earlier and earlier than Hermes's 10:30 a.m. opening time so that they could be served straight away. At its worst, I read online that people were lined up from 5 a.m. in the morning. And a lot of the people at the front of the queue weren't even genuine customers. They were selling their spots on and making profit from the situation. The flagship store is also in a really nice part of Paris, so you can imagine how unsightly it is to have dozens and dozens of people sitting on the sidewalk in the dark, plus the security issues associated with that. Since that system totally backfired, September 2017, Hermes switched to an online appointment system, and that's how I grabbed my Birkin. The website only opens when the store opens, which is 10:30 a.m. You have to submit your contact details, and if you submit the form fast enough, you secure an appointment time for the next day. Appointments can only be made one day in advance, and every day at 7:30 p.m. you find out whether you were successful or not by both email and SMS. I don't see any issues with this system, so I believe it's here to stay. You might think it all sounds super straightforward from here, but I thought I'll just quickly run through the details of my experience and the effort it took to secure my appointment, which was my foot in the door. To clarify, if you want any other Hermes goodies such as jewelry, silk scarves, shoes, etc., it's a lot more straightforward. You just walk in and you can essentially buy it on the spot. And that's because those departments are not as competitive as the bag department. So as a result, when you're looking at bags, you can't just walk in, you have to walk in and secure an appointment. I hope that makes sense. My husband and I were in Paris for a total of 5 days. After I spoke to other people I met who were also trying to grab a Birkin or a Kelly, this seems to be the most common amount of time that people book, because if you try every day, it gives you 4 to 5 chances. Plus, if you visit the other Hermes stores and not just the flagship, that gives you 3 chances every day, which becomes a total of 12 to 15 by the end of your trip. I was not that persistent, and that's simply because it's my first time in France, first time in Paris. There was so much my husband and I wanted to do. I didn't want to be totally obsessed just with this bag. Leading up to the trip, I did a lot of online reading about the lining up early in the morning system, and every time it just made me so anxious. So I ultimately decided to just stop following the news because I had learnt enough, I had learnt all there was to know, and I didn't want it to make me paranoid about enjoying the city with my husband. Unfortunately, in that time, the system changed, so I ended up learning this the hard way. So on my second day in Paris, Tuesday, and this is because day one we arrived in the afternoon, so it was just too late to try and score an appointment. I got up at 4 a.m. and I took a taxi to the store. It was pitch black, the trains weren't even running, and I spent the next 6 hours sitting on the cold, damp floor because it was also raining. I kept thinking, wow, I'm doing really well, because the next group of people didn't arrive until 7:30, and compared to what I read online where there are crowds from 5 a.m., I was pretty impressed. But at the same time, I felt like something was wrong. I knew there would be less people because it was raining and terrible weather, but to have only maximum 20 by the time the doors opened at 10:30, something must be wrong. Of course, the moment they opened the doors, I found out they had this new online system, and I lined up for no reason at all. This is the website. It even works here in Sydney. We're a little bit too far away, but if you're closer to France, you could totally try your chance every day and just book an emergency flight and zip over there. I was super duper sad and exhausted, but on the spot in the store, I quickly submitted my details into the website. Checking the time on my phone, it was 10:34, and I found out that night at 7:30 p.m. I was too slow. I was only 4 minutes into opening time, but I already could not secure an appointment for the next day. So Wednesday morning, I was watching my phone clock religiously from 10:25 a.m. and the moment it was 10:30, I refreshed the page to submit. Unfortunately, my husband and I were in the subway because we were on our way to meet a friend for brunch, and as a result, I had zero reception. This is even after I turned on data roaming and everything. I was willing to splash out to try and secure that appointment, so that failed. Thursday morning was my last and final chance because Friday night we were flying home. My husband and I decided to stay indoors where we have stable Wi-Fi connection until the whole process was over. My husband was trying on his phone, I was trying on mine, and I managed to submit my form in the first 20 seconds. My husband's form never made it because he entered his mobile number wrong, so he never got the confirmation code. But I found out that night, 7:30 p.m., that I was so fast, I had managed to secure the first appointment of the day for Friday, 10:30 a.m. I was really dumbfounded, really shocked, and I was also nervous because it meant I had to prepare for stage 2, the interview. At 7:30 p.m., you receive both email and SMS, the good or bad news. The message is the same, but they make it very clear that your appointment is precise. So to make sure I was not late, I ended up getting there 45 minutes early, and I spent that extra time checking out the luxury brand window displays. At about 10 minutes prior to the doors opening, all of us loiterers, we get in line. There were about 30 of us by the time it was 10:30. Some of them are couples who are sharing one appointment, and some of them were under the impression that they had gotten there early enough to speak with a SA in the bag department. It's very sad, but it's also comforting to know that I wasn't the only one who made that mistake. The moment the doors open, it is a mad scramble. I made the mistake of being polite and just keeping my spot in the line, but in actual fact, everyone just rushes in and looks for the nearest staff member. Security guards even count. You just have to tell them, bonjour, I'm here for the 10:30 a.m. appointment in the bag department, and they will tell you to go upstairs. When you do go upstairs, you'll see an opening to your left and to your right. You want to go to your left and you'll see there's a queue. If you get lost here, which we did, because the bags are in the back corner and we're not familiar with the store, don't ask the security guard here. He has no idea what's going on. And when everyone's scrambling, every second counts. One or two SAs slowly make their way down this line. They scan your passport to confirm your identity and your appointment time. It's really important here that whichever passport you entered online to secure an appointment is the same passport you present to them to proceed. The lady in front of me said her boyfriend had gotten her the appointment, to which they replied that unless he was there, they could not serve her. So it's really important that if your husband or your friends help you to grab the appointment using their passport number, they have to be standing next to you in order for you to be served. What I didn't quite understand was that some people in front of me in the queue were told to take a seat while I was immediately brought to a SA and I was served. So I'm not sure if the people in front of me had asked for a specific person that they wanted to be served by, or they were just there really early for a later appointment time, or maybe Hermes has a log of precisely who submits their form by the second. So even though we all share the same 10:30 a.m. time slot, maybe there's a list of priorities. So I have no idea. These are all speculations. Feel free to contribute below. So the SA handling the passport/appointment confirmations, she led me to another SA who, after introducing herself, then took me a few meters away to a service desk. So we're still in the busy part of the store. I have a patron just a meter from me, I have a patron behind me, diagonal from me, in front of me, etc. So overall, from memory, I believe 5 to 6 of us were served at the same time. You could take 20 minutes if you weren't offered the bag you wanted, or you could take up to 40 minutes if you were and you were finalizing payment. So I'm not sure if Hermes has a few people in reserve ready to be served after the first round of 5 to 6 are finished, and it's still within the same 10:30 a.m. appointment time slot. So I don't have these answers. Feel free to share if you have any information. You might think that after all the stress and hard work of securing an appointment, it's all smooth sailing from here, right? That's not the case if you want to grab yourself the elusive Birkin or Kelly, even the Constance. If you're after bags which are not so rare and coveted, this section will become easier for you. Hermes staff are highly trained to scrutinize patrons who request their rare bags so that they can identify and refuse someone they believe is only going to buy it to resell it. They're obviously civil, but they're not there to make you feel comfortable or welcome. I was being dissected, and the moment I said something wrong, they really honed in and focused on it. Some of the women I met who were also trying to grab a Birkin or a Kelly told me that they have been customers of Hermes for well over a decade. They fly to Paris every year just to try and grab the bag. They already own Birkins and Kellys, it was on her arm, yet there are still years where they are not offered a bag after a week of trying. Hermes are well aware of how rare and desirable their bags are, so they don't need to baby anyone. Even if you're super wealthy, like the lady I spoke to, and you have the perfect Hermes purchase track history, if the SA gets the wrong feeling about you, they won't offer you a bag. There's plenty of fish left in the water for Hermes. My SA said to me, "Tell me what you're after," and then she began taking notes on her iPhone. For those of you who've done your research, you know that this is when you need to speak and you need to show off your knowledge of the Hermes brand, of their bags, to show that you're genuinely interested in owning a piece of Hermes magic. You need to specify the model, bag size, leather type, colors, and hardware. So for me, I said Birkin or Kelly, Birkin 25 or 30, Kelly 25 or 28, Togo Clement Epsom, but preferably not Swift, gold hardware, although I would be perfectly fine with palladium. And finally, in terms of colors, it was gold, etoupe, etan, miel, tobacco camel, and graphite. Generally a neutral color palette. She did interrupt me a few times, so this wasn't a monologue. She asked me quite early if I was an existing customer, to which I said no. I've always wanted to grab my dream bag in Paris, so I thought I'll wait until my first time in France. Just to let you know, they don't respond to romantic waffly responses, so she probed me further. She said, "But have you ever purchased anything from us? Are you in our database?" I apologized and said no, and I tried to change the topic. I said a few times I had tried to get myself onto the waiting list in Sydney, but it was just never open when I contacted the store. And when I found out I was traveling in France, I thought I might as well wait. Fortunately, this answer seemed to satisfy her because at least it showed her that I understood their systems. My big stuff up was on leather, and when I said I would prefer not Swift, she immediately interrupted me and said, "Why?" And I said because I felt like it was less scratch resistant than some of the other leathers. She then grilled me on my knowledge of Hermes leathers, saying that they have more than a dozen, and if I'm not an existing customer, how do I even know this? She showed me her work bag and said, "See, this is Swift. It's perfectly suitable for everyday use." I have to admit there was a visible scratch on it because the surface is very smooth, so it shows very easily. But of course I apologize. I said I totally got my information wrong. You're completely right. It's a beautiful leather, supple, smooth. I would love a Birkin or Kelly in Swift. I thought I had shot myself in the foot, but fortunately, I think it was my performance on the colors which redeemed myself in her eyes. Everyone knows gold, etoupe, etan, etc., the classics, but I did list some slightly obscure, uncommon colors just to show her that I did have knowledge of their products. She then asked me, "What is your priority?" To which I said I love gold hardware and I prefer a neutral color tone. So she responded and said, "So if it's gold hardware and it's a neutral color but it's not a Birkin or a Kelly, is that okay?" I almost had a heart attack. I apologized and said, "I misunderstood your question. I would love a Birkin or a Kelly. I would love to own one of your bags." So she said, that's perfectly fine. I just need to understand your priorities so when I'm in the back room, I know what you're looking for. She then disappeared for about 15 minutes. My husband arrived in this time and said I looked extremely panicked. I begged him to keep his Burberry trench coat on even though the store was quite warm, because I felt like it just helped us to look a little bit more presentable. I'll explain this in the next section, but I had nothing branded on me, not even a handbag. In the time that we were waiting, the SA for the women next to me returned. She said to them that they don't have any Birkins and offered them instead a black bucket bag. I don't even know the model of this. The women rejected it and left, and I felt like, is that a glimpse of my fate? I also was not offered any water, which at least they had, so I felt like I was very low on the priority ladder. Finally, my SA returned and she had with her this ginormous orange box alongside 3 small orange boxes. For those of you who know, this is your first clue that you have succeeded. Your second clue is that she asked us to follow her to another part of the store. It's on the same level, but it's about 10 meters away and it's totally quiet. There's no one else around. She opened the box and presented to me my Birkin. It's a size larger than what I wanted, but it's that glorious gold hardware which I'm obsessed with, and it's in black. Black is one of the most heavily requested colors, to the point where it's essentially unavailable. So I said to her, I couldn't believe how lucky I was that I got offered black. She totally agreed with me, said it's a classic, said it's timeless, it's a cornerstone for the Hermes Birkin, and I said it's perfect, I'm gonna buy this. After that, she then opened her 3 little boxes that she had brought along. So the first one was a silk bag to hold little accessories inside the Birkin. The second one was a collapsible silk bag. I don't know what you call them, you know, when you unzip it and it suddenly expands to a gym bag. And the last one was this orange poppy colored swift leather mirror clochette. So I selected that accessory and proceeded to pay. Let me know what your thoughts are on this, but I felt like I was cornered and I had to choose an accessory to show that I was a true fan of the brand. Could I have gotten away without buying any accessories? Let me know. Once you've agreed to the bag and the accessories, the SA removes the barcode off those items and sticks them onto a piece of paper, which she hands to the lady at the payment desk. That lady then scans the barcodes, which easily brings up the item in their database, and you proceed to pay. My Birkin ended up as 8,000 euros and the mirror clochette ended up as 401 euros. The tax rate is 16.67%. although you can only claim back 10%. So in the end, my Birkin, excluding this random accessory, which I felt the pressure to buy, cost me 10.8k Australian dollars. This is more than a 30% saving compared to what exactly the same bag, same model, size, hardware, leather, color would cost me back in Sydney. Alongside your invoice and receipt, you're also going to get a piece of paper called the Export Sales Tax Form, which contains a barcode. You scan this barcode at the airport to claim your tax back. And you can do this in your last EU country before you go home, so you don't have to do it in France. Some airports won't have the scanning system, like Italy, or sometimes you'll scan it and it'll fail, which is what happened to us. So in that case, you end up lining to speak to a real person in customs who will do the process manually by stamping your receipt. If you're lucky, the customs officer is going to be lax, which is Aussie slang for relaxed, which is what we had, where he didn't even need to see the merchandise. This is awesome because otherwise you have to get on your knees, you have to open up your luggage in front of everyone to try and show them what you bought. Just always make sure you do your tax return first before you even check into your flight, because otherwise you might have to get rid of or check in luggage that contains goods you're supposed to show as part of the customs process. So up until now, I've been in storytelling mode, but now I want to summarize and focus on the do's and don'ts that I've learned from my experience. Online, a heavily discussed topic is whether you decrease or increase your chances if you bring an existing Birkin or Kelly on your arm, or a designer handbag by another brand. In theory, I believe it would be best if you brought another Hermes bag, such as the Lindy, because it shows both brand dedication and that you don't already own one of their holy grail bags. Unfortunately, I was not in that category, so I actually decided to go for the third option, which is to not bring a handbag at all. This wasn't unusual for the way I was dressed, and that again is another heavily discussed topic. I didn't wear anything branded, but I was presentable. I had some black heeled boots, basically H&M knockoffs of my Stuart Weitzman, because they were an emergency buy in Paris. I had nothing else other than sport shoes, jeans, a red coat, and a mustard scarf. I suppose the way I looked was aligned with the persona I try to present, and I believe whichever character you pick, just be consistent and be genuine. So I was playing 3 cards: the first time in Paris card, the starry-eyed at Hermes brand card, and the I'm just a little girl from country Australia, please take pity on me. Even though they don't respond to your emotional cues, they do take note of everything you say. So it is beneficial for you to try and slip in a few subtle messages. For me, that was the fact that this is my 4th day of trying, that I had lined up stupidly from 4:30 a.m. on day 1, and I had my flight home tonight. I.e., my overall message to her was, please don't reject me. This is my last and final chance. I can't simply walk into the store and try again tomorrow. I've run out of time. I also tried humor, which she totally did not respond to, so I guess it didn't work. But I don't think it hurts, because ultimately we're trying to show the essay that we're not a reseller who comes in and puts on a fake character and we do this every week or every day. I am a genuine person who has flown 24 hours to be here. Earlier, I mentioned the importance of your passport since you submit the details online to request an appointment. And again, your passport is the first thing you need to show in order to claim your appointment in store. The third importance of your passport is when you're paying. You have to make sure that the name on your credit card matches that in your passport. They won't accept a card if it's not your name. So for example, if you have a travel partner like your husband or your friend or your sister, make sure you're paying on your card. To make the best first impression, speak at least basic French. So that's bonjour, excusez-moi, merci. They know that you can't speak French beyond that, but it shows that you're trying to be respectful. It should be clear by now that you have to prepare for the interview. You can't just wing it. So for me, that included Googling the colors to make sure I pronounced it correctly. The hardest part I found about the interview was making sure that I communicated clearly my preferences to the essay, so she had a guide as to what to look for when she was in the back. But at the same time, I was sending this double message that I would happily accept any Birkin, any Kelly that they have in stock, rather than return home empty-handed. You might not fall into this category. You might want your specific type and you'll be happy to leave without it otherwise. But for me, I wasn't in that group. And so as a result, I was trying to send 2 different messages and trying to find the balance between them. The problem with saying you're going to be happy with anything is that such a general response doesn't show the essay your knowledge of the brand and of the bag, and might dangerously suggest that you're a reseller who would take any bag and pawn it off. The problem with being specific and actually showcasing your knowledge and passion is that the essay can return back to you and say, well, we don't have what you want. And I think at that point, it will be too late for you to say, I'm actually happy with anything, because they would have spent 15 minutes in the back room, made their verdict, and they have to go on and serve the next customer. From the grilling I received on Swift Leather, it looks like you should never say anything that could be misinterpreted as negative. Make it very clear that you idolize Hermes. Make sure that there's room in your budget if you end up being offered a bag which is a larger size than what you had planned, like me, or if they end up offering you a more expensive leather, because both of those cases will result in a more expensive bag. Plus, you need to have room for purchasing the accessory if you do, like me, feel that it was necessary to maintain a good impression. Stepping back to the online system for securing an appointment, the website only works on smartphones, so don't try to use it on your laptop or computer. Whether it works on iPads or tablets, I don't know, feel free to test it out. You need to submit your mobile number for a confirmation code, so make sure you have that memorized and ready to go. This is an issue if you're a tourist and you just bought a temporary SIM card. As I've mentioned, 4 minutes in was already too late for me to grab an appointment, and 20 seconds got me the first appointment of the day. So hopefully that gives you some sort of sense of a time estimate. The last thing I want to mention is deliveries. Some time ago, I read online that the flagship store receives deliveries on Fridays, and Friday was a day where I happened to secure this bag. Compared to Tuesday, when I lined up outside, I did notice one major difference. The flagship store has 2 entrances, and outside the main entrance there was this impromptu loading dock that had been set up, plus a dedicated valet. A white truck arrived, but I didn't get to see what goods came out of it. And also 2 seemingly important people arrived by chauffeured cars, so maybe the valet was just to greet them. I asked my SA if they do receive deliveries on Friday because I had noticed this outside, and she told me very curtly that they get deliveries all the time at random, so I shouldn't make such presumptions. Ultimately, I do wonder if I was successful in grabbing my Birkin because perhaps I had come into the store on a delivery day, or is it because I'm the first appointment of the day? Because then the SA doesn't feel like they've handed out too many rare bags, they've been too generous, and they need to pare back and be more strict. So share your thoughts with me, I don't have the answers. Looking back, it was an experience out of this world and the stuff of modern day myths. I've relayed this story in a condensed form to several friends, and they're just gobsmacked that people are ready to spend 10k or more, but Hermes won't even let them spend that money. The other factor is that Hermes can treat you pretty poorly, but you just end up wanting more instead of it turning you away. So, if I compare this to the excellent customer service that I had at Gucci's flagship in Florence, where they offered me coffee and water from 3 different people, and they smiled at me, they asked me for my backstory and welcomed me to Italy, completely different experience. One day in the future, when I've saved up again, I'm going to reattempt this once more to grab my dream Kelly. I'm hoping at that stage it will be easier because I would at least have my foot in the door since I'm now registered as an Hermes customer. For those of you who want to experience this firsthand, I wish you the best of luck, and I do agree with the sentiment that's been expressed by others. Your Birkin or Kelly chooses you, not the other way around. So do your best to keep an open mind in terms of what you're going to be offered. I wish you guys an amazing Christmas and New Year. See you all refreshed in 2018 for the topic of my first ever LV bag purchase, also from Paris. For the hardcore LV fans out there, you might already be able to tell what it is based off the box size. So take care, see you again soon.